There's a lot to be angry about when you start living here in South Italy. Predominantly, bureaucracy and inefficiency are kind of up there as the top two things that will drive you crazy. Now, it's one thing to come here on holiday and to enjoy Italy for what it is, but when you actually start living here and you have day-to-day matters that you need to get organised, or it comes to renewing documents or doing anything that requires the use of a public service or system, this is when the cracks often start appearing. And it can be something so simple as making an appointment at a government office, for example, if you have to renew an identity card, or you have to make an appointment at the rubbish tax office, or you have to log in and look at some details concerning your residency, whatever it may be. 9 times out of 10 you will find that the computer systems are very slow. Often they crash and don't work, or you'll be lucky to even be able to get an appointment at least within the next couple of months anyway. So those kinds of inefficiencies can lead to a lot of stress and a lot of anger, not to mention the fact that essentially bureaucracy here is an absolute nightmare. I've spoken about it in this video up here, but essentially there is a form to complete for virtually every single aspect of your life here. And if you think you've had it easy and you've done all of your bureaucracy and paperwork, think again, because I guarantee you there'll be something else that you need to fill in. And the worst part is the offices do not communicate with each other. So you'll be told by one office, don't worry, we will let the other office know. And you will soon realise that they simply do not communicate. And you are the person who now has to take it upon yourself to sort out the situation. It's never, ever, ever the commune, the local council's problem, it's yours, because they don't communicate, but it's your problem that they don't communicate, and you have to be the one to go and sort it out. So these kinds of things literally can drive you stir crazy and angry beyond belief, because it causes unnecessary stress, it causes delays, and it just doesn't make your experience feel very good. And if you ever have to go to like the residency office or the immigration office, depending on your status, you will soon discover that they are probably the worst places on earth to have to visit here in Italy. The people talk to you like you're a piece of dirt on your shoe. They have no respect. There is no organisation, no efficiency. You'll be lucky if there are 2 people working on the day, even if there is a crowd of 50 to 100 people outside. It really is incredible the way that they organise themselves here in Italy, or don't organise themselves, to be fair. And this is a huge cause of frustration and anger, 100%. Not to mention, of course, the driving standards here. The driving standards here in South Italy are crazy beyond anything I've ever seen in my life. People just don't seem to have respect for their own cars, let alone anybody else's. Like when it comes to parking, it's almost considered normal to bump the car behind when you're positioning your car. And if you don't, it's almost like, well, why? Why didn't you? You know, like this kind of behaviour drives me crazy, because in my opinion, that shows a complete lack of respect for other people's property, as much as it doesn't show any respect for your own. But also you've got just the general condition of people driving around as if they are on the roads by themselves. And trust me when I tell you, not only is this highly dangerous, but also it makes for driving an incredibly stressful experience. And I actually love it, because I'm starting to identify the road rage gestures that Italians actually adopt when they start driving. So there is a classic one. If you're driving and somebody just pulls out in front of you and doesn't indicate, and you don't even know where they're going or what they're doing, this is the movement that you need to create. And you need to do this for about 5 minutes. Even after the car's moved off, you've got to be like literally, this is the movement that Italian people will make. I've got to try and capture it on film soon, because the amount of people I see do this, my boyfriend even does this as well, is literally like, as if that's going to change anything. And of course, not to mention the kind of raised hands, the shouting, the beeping, the horns. Oh, it's an orchestra when I go to work every day of beeping horns, because people are just so damn angry. And this is it. This is the reality of life here. It can absolutely drive you nuts sometimes. Yes, disgust quickly rears its head once you've spent enough time living here in South Italy. Let's take Palermo, for example, my current city. The amount of disgust I feel varies every single day, but it is always present. And it's primarily concerned with the cleanliness of the streets. Now, I'm starting to notice this even more in recent weeks, especially now I am walking Tina as well, because I always knew the roads were kind of unusable for humans, but when it comes to walking a dog, there are certain parts of Palermo where you'd have a better walk in the Amazon rainforest than you would actually on a dedicated pavement here in Palermo. And it's really sad. You are battling with overgrown weeds and bushes, like you're battling with pavements that have erupted, and you'll be lucky not to break your ankle if you decide to go over them. Like you're battling with rubbish and people leaving dogs' feces on the floor and not bothering to clean up after themselves. You're battling with overflowing rubbish bins, which, you know, the other day, this is how bad it is. The actual people who are coming to collect the rubbish, RAP, I've spoken about them before, they were actually filming themselves taking the rubbish. I mean, this is a normal procedure, everybody. The cleanliness of the streets, it's a normal thing. Why you have to do before and after videos shows you the extent of the problem here. So, you know, this is the situation. And I just feel like general disgust at people's mindset here and people's attitude to where they live. Like the amount of people I see just like throwing things on the floor as if it's an open rubbish bin. The amount of people I see who have zero respect for the area that they live in. They will literally leave items of furniture by the public rubbish bins, hoping that somebody's going to take them away, when you've only got to lift up the telephone and contact RAP, believe it or not, and they will come and collect it for free. It's actually a service in this city. So there's really no excuse that people need to leave refrigerators or sofas on street corners with no arrangements in place to have them collected. You know, like there is literally no excuse for this. There's no excuse that people cannot use a rubbish bin. Like there is no excuse for people to not keep the area where they live in good condition. There are so many aspects that are out of our control, like the general road standards, for example, the condition of the pavements. Yes, that falls on the responsibility of the local council, the comune, but when it comes to like your own personal responsibility, a lot of people don't have that here. And so it's pretty disgusting sometimes to walk around Palermo, the real Palermo, not the tourist parts. And it just makes me feel very ashamed sometimes as well, like to live somewhere where people have this kind of mentality. Like, it's incredible. This is your home, this is your city, this is your land, this is where you grew up, and you treat it like this. Like, I'm terribly disgusted a lot of the time here because I think, you know, people do not realise what they have. They do not appreciate what they have. And, you know, it's a real shame because there are some people in other parts of the world who would absolutely kill to live here and to have the quality of life that people have here. And even though the quality of life isn't always fantastic, there are people in other parts of the world living in far worse conditions who would probably appreciate this kind of life even more than the people who live here and complain. And that's the sad reality of the situation. And so, of course, you know, it's natural you're going to go from that into feelings of sadness, because I look around and coming here as an outsider, as an immigrant, as an expat, you know, I'm all of the above. I look at this city, I look at this part of Italy, and I think, you know, people here do not appreciate what they have. Like, South Italy is beautiful. It's really imperfect. It does make me angry. It does make me full of disgust, but it is also a really beautiful place. And I feel really sad that people don't see that. All they see is the kind of rubbish and the kind of sad story that this part of Italy has held on to, the shame wound. You know, somebody commented on one of my videos, and I just replied back to it this morning, which is why it's still in my mind, about how in South Italy there is this shame wound. And I was like, it's true. And it's still very open and raw, and it hasn't been treated. And this is why people feel like this here. Like, you know, they might put on the smiles, but deep down they're angry and they're bitter and they're resentful about the conditions of their life and the condition of the area in which they live and the part of Italy in which they live. It is a shame wound. And, you know, there's a lot of history behind that and a lot of reasons why people hold on to this story. But I do like to kind of set it straight. We are in 2024 now, and at some point we've got to deal with that wound, bandage it up, and try to never reopen it again, you know? And life here doesn't make it easy, but it is terribly sad to think that, you know, this is how we're treating the world now, not only for future generations, but just, you know, in a general sense, for people who are coming here to try and experience this part of the world and contribute to the economy as a tourist. You know, I've seen comments in the local newspaper from people visiting Mondello this summer who have been absolutely horrified at the rubbish and the dirty pavements and the weeds that are growing in Mondello. Mondello is supposed to be one of the prime destinations here in Palermo, and even that isn't clean this summer. Like, the beach, always in the summer it's dirty. This is why I tell you not to come here in the summer months, but the pavements are usually clean, and so it's a real shame that this is something that even tourists are picking up on now. And what else makes me sad is that there are some beautiful buildings here in Palermo, like beautiful buildings, beautiful churches, which are abandoned. Like, there doesn't appear to be anybody doing anything with them. They're always locked up. There's no sign of life. And those places could be turned into something magnificent, something that could benefit the community, or they could be turned into housing to help people who don't have homes. There is something that could be done with those buildings that would make them far more efficient than just sorry states of what was once an abundant part of Italy. It's a really, really sad situation. And I know it's complicated, and I know it's because of that bureaucracy. Let's take it back to what makes me angry about living here. Like, you know, it's because of this that we are in this situation where, you know, we have large chunks of South Italy which, you know, are abandoned, aren't touched, aren't invested into, because the bureaucracy just keeps everything tied up in knots. And it's sad, and it's a real shame. And, you know, I really wish people would wake up to the fact that, you know, we live in a place that a lot of tourists envy and want to visit. Like, Italy to a non-Italian is like the creme de la creme of destinations. To an Italian, it's the place under their foot. And that is the sad reality of life here. And because of all of these problems, it can be really, really easy to feel envious. Like, when you start living here in South Italy and you start to really notice all of the things that I've been talking about so far, it's really common to start to feel envious of what life is like in the north of Italy, for example, where, you know, there is this general stereotype which is predominantly true, that things work in the north of Italy. They might be more expensive, but they work. The infrastructure works. The investment goes into the north of Italy. You know, the job opportunities are there. The pay is there. The cleanliness, in the most part, is there. And, you know, that's why it can be very easy to feel bitter, resentful and envious of other parts of Italy where things seem to work, whereas here in South Italy, it just doesn't. And it can feel very suffocating sometimes when you're sitting there in that state of comparison. But, of course, we all know that this is not a healthy place to be. And if you choose to live in one part of Italy, you've got to embrace it, flaws and all, because even the north isn't without its problems. But it is really, really something that you will experience if you choose to live in the south of Italy. At some point, once it's ground you down enough, you will start to look at other parts of Italy and feel a little bit envious that South Italy isn't the same in terms of organisation, infrastructure and overall cleanliness. Living in South Italy, you can sometimes feel embarrassment. And it's not just for like the things that aren't quite right with this part of Italy, but also if you come here as an immigrant, as an expat, you come here and you can't speak Italian very well, you will go through periods of feeling really embarrassed when you mispronounce words or people don't understand you and you get the whole cosa like reaction. Like, it really is something that you have to navigate. And I think, if I'm honest, that's why I have a block sometimes when it comes to speaking, because I go through periods of feeling confident and I will push myself and I will speak. And then I get the whole, cosa? Like reaction, and it kind of just makes me bottle up and stop speaking. And I know that I shouldn't, because it's those kinds of reactions that should fuel me to want to get even better. But it is a natural response. Sometimes when we feel that people don't understand us, we do feel this sense of embarrassment, and then it can take it to the extreme of where you could just kind of close up and don't speak anymore. But it is something you will experience if you're living in a country where you're not strong enough at the language yet. You know, you're still learning, you're not fluent. You are going to go through stages of feeling embarrassed. But also I think you will go through stages of embarrassment anyway, even if you are strong in Italian. You know, you're going to have like cultural differences. There's going to be something that you didn't know about Italy that you're going to experience for the first time, and maybe that makes you feel a bit awkward and uncomfortable and embarrassed. It's normal, and it's part of the process of getting used to life in another country. So I feel like embarrassment is definitely something you will encounter at some point living here in South Italy, but it's something you have to embrace in a way, because you learn from all of those feelings that you have how to do things differently and better the next time. And I think what's really important to remember is that you probably will feel anxiety at certain points in your journey here in South Italy. It's often tied into the whole embarrassment of, like, you know, not being able to communicate properly, being misunderstood, not knowing what to say. These are all things that can lead to embarrassment and later anxiety. But it is about learning to overcome that. I think anxiety can rear its ugly head in many different ways. You can come here with existing anxiety from your own country, and you know, you should be prepared to know that Italy is not going to take that away. It may even accentuate it for a little bit, because you will be tested in different ways compared to what you're used to from your own country. But I will say that you have to have your own coping mechanisms, and you will develop them the longer that you spend living here in South Italy. Feeling anxious about your life here, feeling levels of anxiety connected to work, bureaucracy, making friends, communication, just adapting to your life here, it's all totally normal. I've experienced it. I've been on this up and down roller coaster for 6 years. I've documented how I felt in many of my videos, and I feel like this is something that you have to embrace. Like, there is no perfect way to start living in another country. There is no perfect way to adapt to life here in South Italy. You've just got to follow your own path. And there'll be many videos that you'll watch on YouTube and many other people who will share their experiences, and they found it easy. They just kind of clicked into life here. But this is not the same for everyone. And if you're finding it especially difficult, which I know some of you are, because you reach out to me on Instagram through my DMs and even in the comments on my YouTube videos, I feel you, and I hear you, and I see you, because it's been me on many an occasion, and even to this point I still struggle sometimes with my anxiety, and I'm just finding different techniques and tools that can help me with that. But it's very, very normal, and I think, you know, you must remember this. Don't come here under the illusion that it's going to be easy necessarily to live in South Italy, because it isn't. But the point is that you recognise that it's going to be a challenge, and you prepare yourself with tools and techniques that are going to help you to manage your anxiety once you actually start living here. I think a lot of anxiety that people feel stems from fear. Now, fear is something that you're going to feel when you start living here in South Italy. There'll be many situations that bring this kind of emotion up in you. You might feel fearful about your security, your financial stability, your work situation, for example. I've spoken about it in many videos, including this one up here. Working conditions here in South Italy are very different compared to maybe your own country, and especially if you come here wanting some kind of stability or permanence, you may not necessarily get this straight away at the beginning. You may be issued a determinato work contract which is fixed for a period of time. It's not going to give you the long-term stability that an indeterminato or permanent work contract will. And so, you know, there are going to be moments of fear that you have. Maybe there'll be situations that you haven't prepared for here. You might need to move, or you might need to consider changing regions, or you might have to make some kind of big life change when you're here. And that's, of course, going to bring up lots of different aspects of fear. But it's part and parcel of this kind of experience. I really do believe that if you come to Italy and you don't feel fear at some point, you haven't properly experienced life here in South Italy. And I say that because I think, you know, there are going to be many things that scare you, because there are going to be so many things that you're probably doing for the first time in your life when you move here. And so you've got to embrace, as I said before, with the other emotions, you have to embrace that fear, and you have to know that it is part of the process and a very natural part of the process. And some people choose to talk about this and some people don't. And I'm very open about the fears that I've had and the anxiety that I've had and kind of all of this, because I think, you know, I'm very transparent with you on this channel about life in South Italy, and I want you to come here and make a go of it here. And so if I don't tell you how it really is, I deny you that opportunity to come here and really be prepared and make a success of yourself here. So you know firsthand from me that there are many things here that are going to cause you stress, cause you fear, and ultimately cause you anxiety, but you have to embrace all of it. And you have to know that every single obstacle that you overcome, you are growing as a person and you are developing and you are establishing yourself more and more here in South Italy. It's almost like if you haven't had an obstacle to overcome yet here in South Italy, you're not really Southern Italian yet. You've got to have these obstacles and these things that you are overcoming in order to really be able to say that you have arrived at a place that you can call home. That's just the way it is here in South Italy. Now, there does come a point when you've been living here long enough that you might encounter boredom. Now, this takes a bit of time for you to really start to feel, because of course everything is exciting and, you know, wonderful at the beginning, and then of course you start to go through all those emotions of stress and anxiety and anger. But you will come to a point where, you know, everything just kind of feels a bit mundane. You've arrived at everyday life, which is what I tell you you're going to experience here. This fairy tale, this romantic image that everybody holds on to is not forever. It's for a fixed period of time. At some point, real life kicks in. And, you know, you will find this as well if you've been used to a particular way of life. If you've been used to a really hustle, bustle, let's get going, work all hours, you know, kind of culture, it might come as a surprise to you that the shops close here in the afternoon for a couple of hours, and that really your day is divided into two parts. The morning between 9 o'clock or even 8 o'clock even, depending on the business, and 1 o'clock and 1:30. And then the afternoon from about 4:30 until about 8 or 9 o'clock at night. That's kind of how your day has to be organised. The lunchtime, forget it. Everything pretty much stops unless you need to get something from like a chain shop or something that isn't kind of limited by these hours. But certainly independent businesses, offices will adhere to this kind of afternoon closure, which means that if you've got stuff to do in the early part of the afternoon, you are just not going to be able to get it done. And you have to organise yourself in this way. And, you know, it can lead to boredom, particularly when you are used to kind of always working and progressing and moving and getting stuff done. It's a different way of life, for sure. And I think you have to be able to adapt to this slower pace at points, on Sundays especially, in the afternoons. You've got to go with the flow a little bit, and you've got to maybe try and find some hobbies or activities that can keep you motivated if you feel you've arrived at the point where you're kind of like life is just mundane. It's the same as it would be in your own country. When you start living here in South Italy and you've really adjusted and kind of feel comfortable with life here, that is when boredom will kick in, and that is when you've got to try and find something that's going to keep you excited here and keep you energized and keep you interested, whether it's a hobby, whether it's doing something that, I don't know, means that you rediscover what this part of Italy is all about, or meet new people, or whatever it may be. You've got to try and find something that's going to alleviate those moments of boredom that do inevitably kick in once you feel comfortable with living here in South Italy. And it's precisely in those moments when you're feeling bored that you've got to go back out there and rediscover the joy of what this part of Italy can bring you. South Italy is exceptional on many different levels. It's problematic, it's creating all of the emotions that I've spoken about in this video so far, but it is without a doubt one of the most beautiful parts of Italy. We've got the beautiful sea, we've got the weather, the food, the people, the atmosphere, the way of life, the architecture. Like, you will never, ever, ever get bored of living here in South Italy if you learn to rediscover your joy. If you learn to live in South Italy as if you are a tourist and not somebody living this mundane life every single day. Like, there is so much to be thankful for about living here in this part of Italy. If you live in South Italy, you are living in a part of Italy that people pay good money to come on holiday and see. Gratitude alone. You don't have to get on a plane at the end of the day. You go to your bed and you live this life every single day. I live a life like I'm permanently on holiday. Like, of course I work, this is not reality, but in the sense that where I live is a holiday destination. It's a place that people pay good money to come to visit. And I get to experience this every day. And so I never really feel that urgency to want to go on holiday as much as I did when I lived in the UK. You know, I have glorious weather. I've got palm trees lining the streets. I've got a beach within easy access. You know, I live in a place where it feels tropical. It feels like I'm in the desert. Like, what more could I want? There are so many things that are wrong with this part of Italy, but then there are so many things that are right. And I want to hold on to the things that are right with this part of Italy, because I really do believe when you're in that state, it makes dealing with everything else that you will encounter and all those other emotions a lot more manageable. I'll see you in the next video.